Hi, Caroline here from Caroline Close Pilates. So if you're new to the reformer, some of the first exercises that you start to learn involve holding a position called tabletop. Now this can be super challenging if you have never done this position before. So I'm going to start today by showing you some of the exercises where the legs are in tabletop. And then we're going to talk about how you can support your tabletop position by doing some mat exercises. Okay, so if I'm going to do a tabletop on the reformer, I start off laying down on my back. And when I'm doing this with clients in the studio, I always get them to keep their feet down while they bring their hands into the loops. And depending on what reformer you are using, you might have a choice of small or big loops. Generally, your hands go in the small loops. And you want to start off with your arms right above your shoulders. Make sure you've got enough space between your shoulder rests so that your arms can move comfortably, particularly if you're a bigger person. Guys with bigger deltoids, you want to not feel like you're really pressed up there. Once you've got your arms set above your shoulders, you should have a bit of tension on your ropes. So if they're really slack, you either need to bring your reformer in a little or just adjust your position so that you can get that. And your instructor should help you do that. Okay, so now we want to think about stability of the pelvis when we come into our tabletop. So at the moment I'm going to overemphasize my back being a little bit arched there, so I don't know if you can see the space at my lower back. Now I want to think about closing that space a little, but not to the point where I'm really pushing my lower back into the mat. So can you see how that changes everything a little? I'm going to come somewhere in between that where I'm just resting comfortably, and then I'm going to think about that light drawing down of my belly button to spine, or tightening around my waist, so that when my legs come up, I can do it without moving my spine. Now what often happens is what people will go and just bring their legs up, and can you kind of see how my pelvis has changed? My tailbone's a little bit lifted off the carriage. That's okay, but we can have a more ideal position to work in with our tabletop. So coming into it a little bit more mindfully, keeping everything still, it helps to do that with one leg, then the other. Did you see how still I was? And then also the carriage didn't move. As opposed to maybe having these a little bit loose, and then we kind of pull the knees in, the pelvis is a little bit tucked, and then we're not working the core as effectively in our tabletop. So let's reset that in the way that I like to do it with my clients and what I think is most ideal. So tension on your ropes, engaging around your center, floating one leg up, then the other, and hold, and then you're ready to go into any of your exercises that involve holding a tabletop and reaching the arms, maybe adding flexion, maybe adding arm circles. There's so many things that you can do in tabletop, and that's why I think it's such a beneficial position to be able to set up really well. If you think of your setup as part of your exercise, it's as important as the movement itself, in my opinion. Okay, so let's come out of that, hanging up your loops. Notice when I came out of it, one foot, then the other. So imagine you're in tabletop, and I've just asked you to do the 100, so you're feeling a little bit fatigued. Maybe it's the first time we've ever done the 100. So you can't wait to get those feet down. So if you're here, you've just finished your 100, if you just let both feet come down and you drop them down, can you kind of see how I've got a bit of more space at my lower back now? So my pelvis is tilted forward. That's a really uncomfortable position for the lower back. We're putting a lot of load on the lumbar spine with the weight of the legs dropping away. If you're fatigued, you might have lost your core connection. So the same thing, when you're coming out of it, even though you're tired, you might be trembling, you might be shaking, try to come out one, then the other, much more control, the pelvis doesn't move, and you're going to feel better in your lower back. So again, setup is also when you're coming out of an exercise as much as when you're getting into it. All part of that movement, being mindful. So now you've seen some examples of working in a tabletop position on the reformer. You can see that it's crucial to be able to do a tabletop on the mat comfortably if you're going to do it on the reformer. So some ways to support holding that tabletop and getting really strong and confident with it are bringing yourself down into a supine or on your back position. And again, be mindful of the pelvis. Find what feels comfortable for you, and then you want to think about that drawing down of navel to spine, and then floating one leg up and then the other. And you might sense that that tightening sensation that happens through the centre of the body happens all of its own accord. Now I would begin with just getting comfortable with this, holding maybe for a count of 10, and then practicing bringing the legs down 1 and 2, ideally with the pelvis not shifting while you do this. If that feels too strong, you can just start off with just holding one leg at tabletop and getting really comfortable across the pelvis, sensing stability there. Again, working with a count of 10 perhaps, it can be less, and then floating that leg down, and then you can switch to the other side and repeat there. If you're already comfortable with holding the legs up in your tabletop together, you can add in more challenge by adding movements for the arms. Maybe bringing them down in line with the body, or you might reach them out towards a T, squeezing in, all the time trying to hold the lower body really stable and keeping that connection with your sacrum. So that's the area just above your tailbone. Ideally, you don't want your bottom to be lifted off, because then we're not working as effectively through the core. So you can see knees just above hips here. You can add further challenge again with your tabletop by adding flexion, movement for the upper body where we're curling the head off. You can see the similarity, or the same movement pattern, I should say. It's not even similar, it's exactly the same as what I was doing on the reformer. I even showed you the coordination exercise. So all of these, being able to do them down on the mat is really crucial in being able to successfully execute them down on the reformer. So just a few ideas there for your tabletop practice. Thanks, and I hope you enjoyed this little video. See you next time.